What if I told you there's a European city that was literally cut in half by the Iron Curtain, where families were separated by a white line painted across their gardens, and where a French king is buried thousands of miles from France? While millions of tourists crowd Venice and Ljubljana, this divided city that became whole again remains one of Europe's best-kept secrets. What's up, adventure seekers? Welcome back to Magnificent Must-Sees. Today I'm taking you inside Gorizia and Nova Gorica. Two cities, two countries, one incredible story. This is Europe's Little Berlin, where Italy meets Slovenia, where the Cold War literally split a town in two, and where history, culture, and cuisine collide in ways you've never experienced. I'm about to reveal why this reunited city was chosen as European Capital of Culture 2025, how you can experience world-class culture for 60% less than Venice, and why the story of the Sunday of Brooms in 1950 will give you chills. But here's the mystery I want you to keep in mind. Why is the last Bourbon king of France buried in Slovenia? And why does France want him back? I'll answer this at the end, and the political drama will shock you. Let me show you the divided city that became a symbol of European unity. The division, Europe's Little Berlin. The story of Gorizia begins with one of the most brutal moments in European history, the day a city was torn in half by geopolitics. After World War II, the 1947 Paris Peace Treaty drew a new border between Italy and Yugoslavia that literally cut through the middle of Gorizia. The historic city center remained in Italy, but the eastern suburbs and the strategically important Montesanto railway station went to Yugoslavia. But here's what makes this division so heartbreaking. The border wasn't drawn based on natural boundaries or careful planning. It was drawn with a ruler on a map by diplomats who had never visited the city. Houses were cut in half. Streets were divided. Courtyards were split. Even cemeteries were separated, with families unable to visit their ancestors' graves. The white line was painted across squares and through gardens, marking the border between the capitalist West and the communist East. Witnesses described the shock of waking up one morning to find their city divided, their neighbors suddenly on the other side of an international border. Armed guards patrolled both sides. Crossing the white line could be deadly. Families who had lived as neighbors for generations were suddenly separated by one of the most heavily guarded borders in Europe. On the Yugoslav side, Marshal Josip Broz Tito ordered the construction of a completely new city in 1947. Since the Yugoslav side had lost its urban center, they would build one from scratch. Nova Gorica, New Gorizia, rose from the green fields as a modernist, socialist counterpart to the historic Italian city. The contrast was stark and deliberate. On the Italian side, Habsburg palaces, medieval castle, organic medieval street patterns. On the Yugoslav side, rationalist architecture, wide boulevards, planned parks, socialist modernism. It was a physical manifestation of the Cold War. Two ideologies, two systems, two visions of the future, separated by a white line. The most symbolic location was Piazza Transalpina, Transalpine Square. This square was literally cut in half by the border. A fence was erected, with armed guards on both sides. For decades, families could see each other across the fence but couldn't touch, couldn't embrace, couldn't cross. This wasn't just a border, it was a wound in the heart of a community. The Sunday of Brooms, a story of hope. Now I'm going to tell you one of the most beautiful and bizarre stories from the Cold War. An event so unique that it deserves to be as famous as the fall of the Berlin Wall. After 3 years of almost total isolation, secret negotiations between Italy and Yugoslavia resulted in an extraordinary decision. The border would open for one single day, August 13, 1950. What was planned as a controlled opening became a peaceful invasion that nobody expected. Thousands of people from Yugoslavia streamed into Gorizia to see friends and relatives they hadn't seen in 3 years. But they also came to buy goods that were scarce in Yugoslavia. The shops of Gorizia were overwhelmed by customers desperate for products they couldn't get at home. Here's where the story gets incredible. The most purchased item that day was sorghum brooms. Yes, brooms. In Yugoslavia, there was such a shortage of household goods that people bought brooms in massive quantities. By evening, thousands of people were returning to Yugoslavia in long columns, carrying their brooms over their shoulders like rifles or trophies. The sight was so striking that the day became known as La Domenica delle Scope in Italian or Pohod Matel in Slovenian, the Sunday of Brooms. But the brooms weren't just practical purchases, they became symbols. People joked that they were sweeping away the border dispute. The image of people marching with brooms became a powerful metaphor for peaceful resistance and the absurdity of the division. This single day of opening showed what everyone already knew. The border was artificial, the division was political, and the people on both sides were the same. They were neighbors, friends, family who had been forcibly separated by decisions made in distant capitals. The Sunday of Brooms proved that even during the darkest days of the Cold War, human connection could triumph over political division, even if only for one day. The Royal Mystery, a king in exile. Now let me reveal one of the strangest royal stories in European history. The tale of how the last Bourbon king of France ended up buried in Slovenia, and why his grave has become an international controversy. Charles VI, the last Bourbon king of France, was forced to abdicate after the July Revolution of 1830. His path to exile took him through Edinburgh, Prague, and finally to Gorizia, where he arrived in 1836. Just 17 days after his arrival, he died of cholera in the Coronini Palace. His dying wish was to be buried in the Kostanjevica monastery, perched on a hill overlooking Gorizia. From his deathbed, he had gazed at this monastery and found peace in its view. Today, Charles VI rests in the monastery's crypt along with his son, the Duke of Angoulême, and other members of the Bourbon family. Here's what makes this extraordinary. Charles VI is the only French king not buried in France. The monastery has earned the nickname Little Saint Denis, a reference to the royal necropolis near Paris where French monarchs are traditionally buried. But here's where the controversy begins. French royalists regularly demand that Charles VI's remains be returned to France. They argue that a French king should rest in French soil, that his exile should end even in death. The local Slovenian population strongly opposes this. They consider Charles VI an integral part of their cultural heritage. The monastery has become a pilgrimage site, a tourist attraction, and a symbol of how Gorizia and Nova Gorica has always been a crossroads of European history. The debate raises fascinating questions. Should a king rest in his birthplace or his chosen resting place? Does death end exile, or does it make exile permanent? Who has the right to decide? The country of his birth or the community that has guarded his tomb for nearly 200 years? The monastery itself is beautiful, a Franciscan complex with stunning views over both cities. The crypt where the Bourbons rest is solemn and moving, a reminder that even kings can become refugees, and that sometimes the most important European history happens in the smallest, most unexpected places. The bridge that defied gravity. Just outside the Twin Cities stands an engineering marvel that holds a world record and tells its own story of destruction and resurrection, the Solkan Bridge. The Solkan Bridge over the Socha River is the longest stone arch railway bridge in the world, with a span of 85 meters. Built between 1900 and 1905 during the Austro-Hungarian era, it was constructed from 4,533 hand-carved limestone blocks, each precisely cut to create an arch that has stood for over a century. The bridge is a masterpiece of Art Nouveau engineering. The stones were quarried locally and shaped by master stonemasons who understood that this bridge would need to support heavy trains while spanning one of Europe's most beautiful rivers. The Socha River beneath the bridge is famous for its emerald green color, so vivid it almost looks artificial. The contrast between the white limestone arch and the turquoise water creates one of the most photographed scenes in the region. Drone footage of this bridge is absolutely spectacular. But here's where the story becomes dramatic. In 1916, during World War I, the bridge was blown up to prevent enemy advancement. The Isonzo Front, one of the bloodiest battlefields of WWI, ran through this region, and the bridge was a strategic target. After the war, the bridge was meticulously rebuilt between 1925 and 1927, using the original plans and matching the original construction techniques as closely as possible. The reconstruction was so faithful that you cannot tell which parts are original and which are rebuilt. Today, trains still cross this bridge daily, just as they did over a century ago. Standing beneath the arch, you can appreciate the engineering genius that created a structure capable of supporting modern trains while maintaining its historical integrity. The bridge represents something important about this region: the ability to rebuild, to restore, to honor the past while serving the present. It's a metaphor for Gorizia and Nova Gorica themselves, divided by war, rebuilt through cooperation, stronger for having survived. The culinary crossroads. The food culture in Gorizia and Nova Gorica is unlike anywhere else in Europe because it represents the fusion of three distinct culinary traditions: Italian passion, Slovenian heartiness, and Austrian precision. Let me give you specific examples of dishes that exist nowhere else. Jota is a hearty stew made with sauerkraut, beans, and potatoes that reflects the peasant history of the region. It's comfort food that has sustained people through centuries of political upheaval. The Rosa di Gorizia is a radicchio that looks like a red rose and is harvested after the first frosts. This vegetable is so prized that it has protected designation of origin status. Chefs throughout the region create dishes around this unique ingredient. Goulash alla Goriziana is the Hungarian classic adapted with local ingredients and Italian techniques, creating something that's neither purely Hungarian nor purely Italian but distinctly Gorizian. But here's where the food culture gets really special. The wine regions of Collio, Italy, and Brda, Slovenia, form a single wine landscape that ignores the political border. The same hills, the same soil, the same grape varieties, but two different countries. The region is famous for white wines, particularly Ribolla Gialla, called Rebula in Slovenian. These wines have a distinctive mineral quality that comes from the limestone-rich soil and the unique microclimate created by the proximity to both the Alps and the Adriatic Sea. The Borderless Beer Project represents the ultimate symbol of cooperation. Breweries on both sides of the border collaborated to create a beer that celebrates their shared heritage rather than their political division. Here's the insider secret for food lovers. You can have world-class meals in Gorizia and Nova Gorica for a fraction of what you'd pay in Venice or Ljubljana. A complete meal with local wine costs $20–30, compared to $60–80 for equivalent quality in major tourist cities. The traditional osterias and gostilnas, taverns, serve authentic regional cuisine in settings that have remained unchanged for generations. You're not eating in tourist restaurants, you're eating where locals have eaten for centuries. Now let me reveal the practical reason why Gorizia and Nova Gorica should be on every smart traveler's radar. This region offers Venice-level culture and beauty at 60% lower costs. Let's break down real numbers. In Venice, a mid-range hotel costs $200–300 per night. In Gorizia and Nova Gorica, you'll pay $80–120 for equivalent quality. That's a 60% savings on your biggest expense. A three-course dinner in Venice costs $40–60 per person. In Gorizia and Nova Gorica, the same quality meal costs $25–35. Coffee and pastries that cost $8–12 in Venice cost $3–5 here. Museum and cultural site entrance fees are dramatically lower. While Venice charges $28 for major museums, Gorizia's castle and museums cost $5–8. Transportation is mostly walkable, eliminating the $9.50 Vaporetto tickets that add up quickly in Venice. When you do need transport, local buses cost $1.50. Here's the calculation. A 3-day trip to Venice for two people costs approximately $1,200 to $1,500 for accommodation, food, and activities. The same 3 days in Gorizia Nova Gorica cost $500–700 for equivalent or better experiences. But here's what makes this even more valuable. You're not sacrificing quality for savings. You're getting authentic experiences, less crowded attractions, and genuine interactions with locals who are proud to share their unique culture. The region offers the same Central European elegance as Vienna or Trieste, the same cultural depth as major Italian cities, but without the tourist industry markup that has made those places increasingly unaffordable. Gorizia and Nova Gorica's designation as European Capital of Culture 2025 represents something unprecedented. The first time two cities in two different countries have shared this title. The theme, Go Borderless, perfectly captures what makes this place special. The program includes over 300 cultural events throughout 2025, from concerts and exhibitions to performances and festivals that celebrate the region's unique position as a bridge between cultures. The infrastructure investments for 2025 have transformed both cities. New cultural venues, restored historical sites, improved transportation connections, and enhanced public spaces make this the perfect time to visit. But here's what makes 2025 special. The legacy projects continue beyond the official year. The EPIC, European Forum for the Interpretation of the 20th Century, provides interactive exhibitions about border history. The Cross Stories project uses augmented reality to show how the cities looked during division. The collaboration with Chemnitz, Germany's 2025 Capital of Culture, and the 2026 capitals Oulu, Finland, and Trenčín, Slovakia, creates a network of European cultural exchange that keeps international attention focused on the region. Major events in 2025 include Estoria, the region's largest history festival, Gusti di Frontiera, the biggest food and wine festival in northeastern Italy, and numerous concerts, exhibitions, and performances that showcase both historical heritage and contemporary creativity. Here's the insider tip. Visit in 2025 or early 2026 to experience the cultural programming while avoiding the crowds that will inevitably discover this place in the coming years. You're getting in before the secret gets out. Remember the question about why Charles de Cussecas is buried in Slovenia and why France wants him back? Here's the answer. Charles de Cussecas chose Kostanjevica Monastery as his final resting place because he found peace there during his final days. His burial there wasn't an accident or a temporary measure, it was his explicit wish. France wants him back because French royalists believe that a French king should rest in French soil, that his exile should end with his return to the royal necropolis at St. Denis. They see his burial in Slovenia as a continuation of the humiliation of exile. But Slovenia refuses because Charles X has become part of their cultural heritage. The monastery has guarded his tomb for nearly 200 years. The local community has maintained the crypt, welcomed pilgrims, and integrated the royal burial into their identity. The real answer is that this controversy perfectly symbolizes what Gorizia and Nova Gorica represent: the tension between national identity and European unity, between respecting borders and transcending them, between claiming heritage and sharing it. Charles X's grave is a metaphor for the entire region, a place where European history is so intertwined that trying to separate it into neat national categories becomes impossible and ultimately pointless. The king will likely remain in Slovenia not because of any legal decision, but because his grave has become a symbol of how European heritage belongs to all Europeans, regardless of which side of a border it happens to fall on. The call to adventure. Gorizia and Nova Gorica prove that the most interesting European destinations aren't always the most famous ones. This reunited city offers something that Venice, Ljubljana, and other tourist magnets cannot: authentic culture without crowds, world-class experiences without tourist prices, and a story of division and reunion that resonates with anyone who believes in European unity. Here's my challenge. Visit Gorizia and Nova Gorica in 2026 while the cultural programming is still active but before the masses discover it. Walk across Piazza Transalpina where the border once divided families. Visit the Bourbon Crypt and contemplate the meaning of exile. Stand on the Solcan Bridge and marvel at engineering that has survived wars and time. Taste wines from vineyards that ignore political borders. Experience a place where history isn't just preserved in museums, it's alive in every street, every building, every meal. Which part of this divided city's story surprised you most? The Sunday of Brooms, the French king in Slovenia, the world record bridge? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. If this video revealed a European destination you never knew existed, smash that subscribe button. I uncover hidden gems like this that offer authentic experiences without the tourist chaos. Gorizia and Nova Gorica stand as proof that Europe's most compelling stories often happen in the smallest, most unexpected places, where borders become bridges, where division becomes unity, and where the past and future meet in perfect harmony.